I'm going to run through my presentation fairly quickly because really the value here is we want to really get your feedback and hear from you and get those discussions moving and then next is hearing from David Brown about his experiences at CIBC. So that's very interesting. So I just really want to quickly talk a little bit about CSA and particularly our work in developing occupational health and safety management systems. I don't want to spend too much time on who we are. Hopefully most of you know about CSA. We're obviously a standards development organization, certification and testing organization, consumer product evaluation organization. We have offices all over the world. We not only develop standards in Canada, but we are also accredited to develop standards in the US, for example. So our certification and testing business is our largest group at CSA. We test and certify products all over the world. In the standards area where we work, Jill and Jean, there's many different types of standards that we developed. I work in the occupational health and safety standards group, but we have over 3,000 standards and codes, and really we're all about, we're a member-based organization. Folks like yourself, volunteer experts, sit on technical committees to develop the standards. We facilitate the process. So in our OSH area, there's over 175 standards. A lot of those standards are referenced in regulations, and we work in many different areas, as you can see. And again, some of our experience around the table, some of you folks have been on CSA committees developing standards such as ergonomics, psychological health and safety, the OSH training standards. So we really appreciate, and again, my job as a project manager is really working to recruit folks like yourself, experts on a topic to sit on a technical committee. I think that Dylan and others here that have that experience, it's a rewarding experience to be part of a CSA national technical committee, to work together to achieve consensus, hammer things out on an important standard such as this topic. So hopefully we can move forward in that direction. Really quickly, again, we do have a standards system in Canada. We're not the only standards development organization. We are accredited by the Standards Council of Canada, but there are 6 other, we call SDOs, or Standards Development Organizations in Canada. We are the largest, CSA, but as you can see, there are others. And the national standard system is all about having an open and transparent process to develop consensus-based standards. And as I said, the members develop the standards, not CSA. So you'll get copies of this presentation in your handouts and whatnot. But the key principles of a consensus process is, again, what we're talking about here today is developing a national document, a national guideline, national standard, making sure that we have the experts around the table from across Canada that will come together and decide, hey, what will the standard look like? What's the scope of this thing going to be? What's going to be of value? And that's where we rely on your feedback and discussions and hopefully move forward. We do follow a rigorous accredited process when we develop standards. And again, I'll come back to this a little bit later, because when we talk about, really, do we agree that there's a need for a national document here, a national standard? And then we could talk about those next steps, about getting to the next step, getting the support, getting the funding, establishing a technical committee, and going through that process of developing that national standard. We'll come back to that. In terms of our occupational health and safety management systems, really what we're talking about here, and I don't want to spend too much time, but it's really about having a reliable, familiar, and consistent process, right, Dylan? And please jump in, any of you, Mary Lou, and have all this expertise, Larry, on management systems to help me, but having that process, that systematic process to address those hazards and risks, and in this case we're talking about work disability management, but having that consistent process of continuous improvement. And we've used that model, that management system approach for a number of standards, and it's worked effectively. And the thinking is, for this type of topic, this is the approach to take as well. A management system describes those interrelated elements, those essential elements in the workplace to support the development and implementation of an effective program. And again, we see this familiar type of structure through management, commitment, leadership, planning, implementation, evaluation, and continuous improvement. Who hasn't seen that model? That plan, do, check, act model. We've all seen it. You've seen it, I mean, I'm sure, right? It's an effective process, Dylan. It's worked with the training. It's worked with the psychological health and safety and some other standards that we worked on because it provides that systematic process, continuous improvement process. And that's what we're really talking about here for this type, for a standard on work disability prevention. Jump in if I'm missing something. So a number of our standards have taken this approach and we're listing it here. There's some that are in development now. And the rest of the slides kind of talks about some of the different types of standards. The Z1000, Mary Lou, you're involved. Larry, you're involved with that one. Dylan, are you on that one? And that's really kind of a key foundational document in terms of an occupational health and safety management system standard. And now, and we've all heard ISO 9000, 14001. We're following that same approach. And now there's work going on, and we're involved at CSA, and some of the folks here are involved in developing an international standard on occupational health and safety management, ISO 45001. If anybody wants to jump in and say something about that, but again, it's that familiar, consistent process to manage risks and hazards. OSH training, Dylan, you're the chair of that committee?
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's awesome. There we go. If you want to learn more about that standard, talk to Dylan. Z1002 on OSH hazards and risks. We have copies around the table on the Z1003 psychological health and safety standard. An excellent standard. Again, we followed this process, a very similar process here where we actually, before we started, I was going to have Jean to talk to this, we actually had a workshop, right, Jean, to again identify the support and need for the development of the standard. Based on that workshop, we went ahead with the development of the standard. I was involved with the Z1004 workplace ergonomic standard. And again, I just threw in some of these examples. That typical plan, do, check, act model. Sometimes we've kind of we've tailored it to the different standards. That's the Z1004. Mary Lou, Larry, you're on that committee. I look after our emergency management standards. There's the Z1600, emergency management and business continuity. We developed our own little illustration. Again, plan, do, check, act. And again, no matter the type of standard we're talking about, those familiar components or elements of that continuous improvement process: program management, planning, implementation, evaluation, management review. So you can structure that standard, you know, and tailor this concept, tailor this approach to the standard on work disability prevention. So that's really all I wanted to say in terms of that portion. And the question that we're asking you, is a management system approach appropriate for this type of standard we're talking about here? And that's the type of feedback that we want to get. Does that make sense? Having that structure in place, having a structure where it outlines kind of those essential components or elements of a work disability prevention management system. Brief, but I'll come back a little bit later if needed to talk about our process. So let's get on to the next presentation.